Hi, I'm Jason Sullivan of Rathbone Group, and this is On Subrogation, your free video resource to assist in your pursuit of subrogation claims. This video will cover sudden medical emergencies. If you're interested in just regular sudden emergencies, check out our video on that topic. A sudden medical emergency is when a party loses consciousness so that they're no longer in control of a vehicle and cause damages. The loss of consciousness must be sudden, and it cannot be foreseeable. You may see this where a party has an accident and then they claim, I had a heart attack, or I had a stroke, or I just blacked out and I have no idea what happened. Therefore, I'm not responsible for your losses. You always want to look to see first whether or not that party lost consciousness. Are there any medical records or diagnosis after the loss that show that they in fact did lose consciousness? Second, you want to see whether or not it was foreseeable. If a party has a prior medical history of losing consciousness, fainting, having dizzying spells, if they have some kind of medical diagnosis that shows they have a condition that subjects them to those things, if they're under a doctor's care for any of these things, they may have had notice that it could happen, and therefore they should not be behind the motor vehicle at that time. You see those commercials or those directions on medication that say, do not operate heavy machinery. There's a reason for that, because some drug side effects cause people to lose consciousness. If a party's on any of those drugs, they should know that there's a possibility, and therefore if they lose consciousness, it would be foreseeable if that happened. Some states actually hold that the loss of consciousness is an act of God. Pennsylvania, interestingly, said, no, all these variety of maladies happen to people and it's common knowledge, and so we're not going to subject this to an act of God defense. Rather, it's the loss of consciousness defense. Anytime that you have a defendant claim that they lost consciousness, you're always going to want to do some discovery to find out whether or not it was in fact foreseeable. There's an interesting case where a party said they had no recollection of the events beforehand. They were willing to put on doctor testimony that said it's possible that they lost consciousness and that caused the loss, but the doctor couldn't conclusively say that that person in fact lost consciousness before the collision occurred. They might have lost consciousness after the collision or as a result of the collision. The court found that there wasn't enough evidence to allow the jury to consider whether or not there was the sudden medical emergency defense in that case, because the defendant had no recollection and could not say whether or not they lost consciousness. So if a party is raising it, you're going to want to find out from any other passengers in the vehicle or potentially other drivers on the road. If people saw this driver slumped over and not even looking out the window, then arguably they lost consciousness before the collision happened. There are cases, though, where a passenger will say, no, they were alert and they were aware until the collision happened, and then after the collision, they were unconscious. In those cases, that's evidence that will help you defeat a sudden medical emergency. You also want to look to see whether it's foreseeable. Look for those doctor records. Did they have a prior condition? How long had they been under a doctor's supervision? Or possibly, were they not under a doctor's supervision? And can other people testify to them losing consciousness or fainting or becoming dizzy? If those things were happening and they did not seek medical care, then arguably a reasonable person would have sought the care so that they would not be behind the wheel at that time. You're always going to want to look into and find out exactly what that person knew and was aware of before they got behind the wheel that day that unfortunately caused the collision. For On Subrogation, I'm Jason Sullivan. If you have a topic or a question you'd like to see addressed in this series, please email us at video@rathbonegroup.com. Again, for Rathbone Group and myself, thank you very much. That's the long and short of it.